So let's just get right into it. When Tucker Carlson sat down with Vladimir Putin, it was a huge deal, right? A global moment. But what if I told you that whole thing was less about brave journalism and more about a very clever, very specific playbook? We're going to break down this idea of manufactured credibility, how powerful people get branded as outsiders to earn your trust, all while being backed by the very system they say they're fighting.
To really get this, we need to rewind the clock a little, to February 2024. There were two massive stories about press freedom happening at the exact same time, but chances are you only really heard about one of them.
So on one side, you had the Tucker Carlson interview in Moscow. I mean, it was everywhere. It was framed as this courageous act of speaking truth to power. But on the other side, in a quiet courtroom in London, Julian Assange was literally fighting for his life, facing extradition to the U.S. on espionage charges. Press freedom groups were sounding the alarm, saying this case could basically outlaw national security reporting as we know it. One event was a masterclass in public relations, sparking endless debate. The other, with way bigger stakes for journalism, almost total silence from the big broadcast networks. And you gotta understand, that difference in coverage wasn't an accident. So how in the world did Tucker Carlson become the main character in this global drama? Well, it all comes down to a really slick marketing strategy: branding the exile.
Okay, this right here is the core idea we're talking about today: manufactured credibility. It's not about someone building a following from the ground up. Nope, it's a top-down strategy. You take a person who has deep insider connections, you create this public story that they're a rebel and outlaw. Then you use a bit of controversy and a whole lot of money from powerful backers to make them the person everyone turns to when they don't trust the news anymore. The bottom line is, they look like rebels, but they actually function as assets.
The moment that really kicked this rebrand into high gear was when he got fired from Fox News. Now, this happened right after Fox had to pay out a massive settlement for defamation. But for his fans, the story wasn't about a company trying to limit its legal exposure. No, it was spun as proof that he was being persecuted, that he got fired because he was getting too close to the truth. And just like that, a corporate liability was turned into a populist badge of honor. And this quote it nails it. Being kicked out, whether it's for real or just for show, becomes a kind of currency. It's the ultimate proof that you're not part of the club anymore. And ironically, that's the best way to build trust with an audience that feels like they're on the outside looking in. But here's where that whole outlaw story starts to fall apart. Because when you actually look at Carlson's background, well, let's just say it's about as far from anti-establishment as you can get. Yep, this is the piece of the puzzle that changes everything. Tucker Carlson's dad wasn't just some guy. He was a major player inside the U.S. government's information machine. Now let's just soak this in for a second. From 1986 to 1991, we're talking the absolute peak of the Cold War. Dick Carlson was the director of The Voice of America. This was part of the U.S. Information Agency, whose job, in its own words, was to shape global narratives to support American foreign policy. We are talking about the literal machinery of state-sponsored messaging. So Tucker Carlson didn't learn about media from the outside. He grew up right in the belly of the beast. And, his own career path totally reflects this. Back in the 2000s, he was that kind of preppy, bow-tie-wearing host on CNN and MSNBC. Totally establishment. Then he goes to Fox News, and by 2017, he's perfected this populist character, telling millions of people that the elites are all lying to them. His firing from Fox? That wasn't the end. It was the final, critical piece of the puzzle to complete his transformation into the ultimate exile. Look, this whole playbook isn't just about one guy. Tucker Carlson is just a really clear example of a much wider pattern, where you see state power, private money, and narrative control all blended together. And once you see the pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. Okay, take someone like Steven Mnuchin. He goes from being the U.S. Treasury Secretary straight to founding a private equity firm. And what do they invest in? Military-grade cybersecurity. And who are his partners? Oh, just the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs and the former head of Mossad, Israel's spy agency. You see that? It's a seamless slide from public power to private influence, all happening inside the national security world. Or look at Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock. His firm is so massive that when the economy is in crisis, the Federal Reserve literally hires them to help manage the situation. At the same time, Fink is up on stage at places like the World Economic Forum, pushing themes of global governance. So BlackRock acts as both a private company and a kind of public utility, completely blurring the line between corporate interests and state power.
And then you've got Michael Mnuchin. This is a wild story. He goes from being the junk bond king, convicted of fraud in the 90s, to this globally respected philanthropist. His Mnuchin Institute is now all about aligning private capital with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. Think about that. The same kind of financial wizardry that was once called predatory is now being pitched as the way to save the world.
So this is where the money and the microphone really come together. You have these patrons, right? Like Peter Thiel, who's known for funding insurgent voices like Carlson, while his company Palantir is busy building surveillance tech for spy agencies. And then there's Elon Musk. His company SpaceX is a critical contractor for the Pentagon, while his other company, X, provides the free speech platform where all these voices can get amplified. It's a perfect system. So you have to ask yourself, why? Why does this system even exist? What's the strategic point of building up these figures who seem like they're challenging everything? Well, it turns out there are three huge advantages. First, it gives all that populist anger a safe place to go. It's like a pressure release valve. It's way better to have a hero you can control than a real revolution you can't. Second, it takes these giant, complicated structural problems and turns them into simple dramas about personalities, the truth tellers versus the liars. And third, it uses this constant feeling of crisis and fear to get us to agree to new systems of control and surveillance, all in the name of keeping us safe.
Okay, I know, this all sounds pretty dark, but the point here isn't to just feel hopeless. The source material doesn't just point out the problem, it actually offers a framework, a toolkit for how to think clearly in this kind of environment. So, what can you do? The remedy has 4 key parts. Number 1, refuse to let the fear narratives run your life. Number 2, practice verification. Actually read the primary sources, follow the money, and start treating every single media clip you see like it's an advertisement. 3, interrogate the motives. Always ask, why am I being told this right now and who's paying for it? And finally, number 4, build independent systems in your own community, with your own neighbors, because real power comes from not being totally dependent on these big, centralized systems.
And really, that's the final takeaway. In an era of managed dissent and manufactured credibility, the most radical thing you can do isn't to find a new hero to believe in. The most subversive act is to simply stop outsourcing your own judgment. It's about doing the hard work of thinking for yourself.